channel, or if you happen to be new here, my name is Jess. As you guys can tell from the title of this video, today we're going to be having a heart-to-heart about how to read more. I often get asked how I end up reading as much as I do, and I wanted to sit down and give you guys my tips and tricks on how I'm able to squeeze as many books in as possible, and I thought you guys would find these really helpful. And if you have any other ideas on how to read more during the month, please leave those in the comments below. But I do have 6 or 7 points that I want to talk about today that will help you guys optimize your reading for the month. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is actually buy books, obviously. Spend a lot of money on books. Pretty much all of the money that I make in the month, whether that be via my paycheck, whether that be tips that I make at work, whether that be gift money that someone gives me, whatever it may be, I spend pretty much all of my money on books because, let's be real, the bigger the library, the more books you're going to have to be able to read, which means the more options that you're going to have to read. If there's a book you're reading that you don't want to read, you can easily set that down and pick up something else. So the first tip I have is actually to spend a ton of money on books. Go to the library if you need to, whatever it may be, but make sure you are accumulating a lot of books over the month. The next point I have here is actually to find a job that allows you to read. I realize that people are often thinking about how much a job is actually paying you, but what really needs to be focused on here is finding a job that allows you time to read. Yes, having a paycheck is important, but your employer needs to understand that reading is obviously the most important thing to you. You need to meet your reading goal. You need to make sure you're reading as much as your friends. You need to have time to do that. And while we need to work, we also need time to read. So make sure whatever job you're getting does allow you time to read throughout the day. Now the next point I have here is actually one that I practice quite often, and that would be giving up on sleeping. On average, I get anywhere from 3 to 4.5 hours of sleep a night. What I tend to do is I will go to work, read at work, because I tell my boss, look, I got this book that I need to finish. I understand that you need me to read, but I'm going to be reading at work. And then when I get home, I will read, and then I will go to bed incredibly late and then wake up incredibly early and continue to read as well. I'm pretty much always reading. I have sacrificed sleep in an effort to make sure that I have more time. Obviously, the days aren't getting any longer, so I need to make sure that I'm just sleeping less, because that's really the only other place that I can sacrifice some of my time is not sleeping. Now the next tip I have here is to actually give up all of your hobbies, all of your other hobbies. We all know reading is the most important one. It's the most gratifying of all of the things that we do. We need to make sure that, you know, you like photography, you like golf, you like, you know, building stuff, woodworking, whatever it may be. You need to give those up because those are taking up extra time that you don't have, that you need to be devoting to reading. So give up all those extra hobbies. You don't need them. And the next one we have here is actually very hard to do, but one that I think is very important, and it is saying goodbye to your friends. A lot of my friends want to hang out and do stuff, and I always tell them, can I bring a book? Can I read? Is it something, you know, you can't read in a dark movie theater. It's considered rude if you have your phone out and you're trying to read. You can't really like read at dinner when you're out with people. You know, they always want to do stuff that requires 2 hands, and I need 2 hands to hold a book. So I have said goodbye to a lot of friends recently, and while it was hard, it was definitely a decision that I think needed to be made, and now I have a ton of time for reading. It's kind of lonely, but I have a ton of time for reading now. Alright, as you guys can tell, those were obviously satire. My sense of humor is a little dry, so I don't know if you picked up on that. Don't do any of those things. Don't do any of those things. Make sure that you're making time for people you love and hobbies that you love. But the first point that I want to stress realistically on how to read more during the month is just to recognize that it is reading. I think if you're stressing yourself out trying to achieve a goal or feeling bad that you aren't reading enough, I feel like that's just going to set you back even more. So the first point that I want to make here on how to actually successfully read more during the month is to remember that it is just reading. It is a hobby that you love, and that will bring joy into your life, and it will make it seem more carefree, and I feel like that kind of makes it so that we're wanting to read more and able to read more. So try not to stress yourself out thinking about all of the books that you need to read, and just take it one book at a time. So the first thing that I've been doing recently that has been really helping me to read more is actually buddy reads. Now one of them I fell very, very far behind on, but she forgives me. But I feel like buddy reads are a good way to get more reading in, because you're reading something that you're interested in, and you're reading it with someone that you're interested in. You know, whether it be a friend, a family member, your significant other, you know, whoever it may be, a coworker. I think it's a lot of fun to do buddy reads because instead of just reading a book and digesting the information, you're actually digesting it with somebody else. You're able to converse with them and talk about what you're reading and what you think about it. And I think that when it comes to me reading more, this is one of the most important points. I always say yes to buddy reads because I think 1, they're so much fun, and 2, they really motivate you. Now you need to pick a good buddy read partner, somebody who's going to realistically help you break down a book and decide how quickly you guys need to be reading it. You know, you guys can talk about it. You don't want to agree to read a really huge book in like 4 days if that's not something that you are comfortable with, if you don't have the time for it. So just finding a good buddy read partner and finding a good book to buddy read, I think, is one of the best ways to read more during the month. Next thing you should be doing is reading things you're interested in. Now, I'm somebody who likes to go out, recently at least, outside of the genres that I normally read and find time to read things that I'm not normally reading. And I think that's a lot of fun because it kind of makes things new. But if you find yourself kind of getting into a slump or you feel like you're not reading as much as you normally do, read books that you're interested in. Reread old favorites if that's what it takes, you know, just to get your love for reading back again. But always try to read things that you have a genuine interest in, because if you're reading things that you're like, I don't really know if I like this, learn how to DNF books and move on to the next book. I think it would help a lot. If I don't like a book, it'll take me anywhere from like 1 to 2 weeks to read it when I can normally read a book in like 3 or 4 days. So I realize and have started to recognize that if something's taking me longer than like 4 or 5 days to read, it's a book that I'm not loving and I need to go ahead and just DNF. Now, I've talked about this before, but this one is something that also really helps me. Always keep a book with you. I know a lot of people do that, but keep a book with you for reading on breaks at work, reading when you're waiting for appointments, reading if you're out for dinner, maybe, you know, like if your family understands that you like to read, that kind of thing. There's so much downtime during the day that we have that we could take to actually read, and I think it's really important. I actually learned this from Stephen King. I believe in On Writing, he talked about it, talking about how people should always have a book with them. Like, it's really easy to get on your phone. It's really easy to do things like that. But I think instead of doing that, pick up a book and read it. And you'll be so surprised how much reading you're able to get done during the month just from that little bit of downtime waiting for things to happen. Now, the next thing I've also spoken about before, I think this point and the last point was done in a vlog, but it is to mark chapters. Now, this can be done during a buddy read. This can be done just for you personally. Kind of break down how many chapters there are, how many days, weeks, whatever it may be that you would like to finish it in, and then break down each chapter from that point. So for me, like, I'll read a book and say, okay, I'm going to finish it in 4 or 5 days, and then I will break it down into 4 or 5 parts. And then at the end of that, once you've finished what you're supposed to be reading, you'll oftentimes find that you'll feel, one, very satisfied and very accomplished, and it's very, very encouraging, and it keeps you wanting to read. But also it makes things seem a little bit more manageable. And what oftentimes happens is once you hit the point where you were supposed to have stopped, you'll find yourself wanting to read more. And I think that's really cool because you've already set up a time frame for yourself that you can realistically get the book read, but then you find yourself wanting to read more and more. And I think that is one of the things that has helped me so much, and especially during buddy reads. But I don't know, I just think it's one of the most not talked about ways that really helps me. It's just sectioning things off. I actually got this from Sam, which is that bookish gamer here on YouTube. She talked about it kind of when we were breaking up things for Hype or Not, because she helps me with that. And she said she does it for her own books personally. And I was like, you know what, that's a really great idea. So I've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 months, and it's been so helpful. So thank you, Sam, for letting me in on that. But I hope you guys will try it because I think it helps a ton. Now, the last point I have here is one that I think is pretty important, is finding a comfy place and routine for reading. Like, I personally don't like reading in bed and I don't like reading in the bath, but there are certain places in my house or like reading in my car or even at work that I find very comforting and like my happy, cozy place, and it makes my reading go by so much more smoothly. I think finding a place that is your own, that is comfortable, that you find, you know, enjoyment in being in that area will make your reading a lot easier. If you're trying to read when it's really hectic all the time, or you're not really setting aside time for yourself, you know, there is a level of priority that reading should take if it's something that's important to you. Not to the point where you're sacrificing other things, but, you know, instead of getting on the computer and watching videos, maybe you just curl up with a book and read. Or instead of, you know, staying up late and watching TV, maybe read instead. Or if you're like me, put on a movie and then read. Like, I can do both at the same time. I don't necessarily need to pay attention to the movie. Whatever your routine may be, try to really set one up for yourself, maybe like once or twice a week, once every night. If you're one of those people, like, that's what I do. Every night I will come home and read some. But just having a routine and a comfy place for yourself, I think, is another thing that'll really help you read more during the month. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I'm sorry if the first part of this video was a little weird, but I have been trying to be more myself on camera, and not in the sense of I'm not myself ever. I'm always myself on camera. But I have a weird sense of humor, and you'll see a little bit of that come out later on in the month. I have a really funny video planned, but I just wanted to bring a little bit more of that to the table. Also, I feel like I've seen some hacks for reading recently that have been floating around the internet, and a couple of them I was just like, I cannot believe people actually think that this is a good idea. One of which was giving up other hobbies. So I wanted to bring that to this video today, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any other reading tips for anyone down below, leave it there, or if you have any tips for me and my reading, please leave it there as well. But I hope you guys are having a good week, and I will see you guys in Monday's video. Bye!